Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday. This is Mike Dolph, Chief Revenue Officer, Inflow. I've got with me Chris Mitchell, our Chief Technology Officer. Really happy to be talking about conversation analytics, and actually specifically around conversation analytics and the current global pandemic with COVID-19. What are some things we can do to understand what our customers are thinking and feeling and saying, and then the same thing for our employees. So conversation analytics is an awesome topic. I love this. We're going to dive into examples that we've pulled really from our own organization. Before we do that, a couple housekeeping things. We'll record this. So if you have some folks who think would be beneficial for this, we'll try to get a recording out to you for you to pass that along. Also, always have other topics and webinars coming up. We've got one on the 5th, which is the new normal, work from home and remote employee enablement. And that one actually has some, I think, Grubhub gift cards for everybody who attends that one. We've got some ITEL ShortTel user training coming up on the 12th and the 21st as well, user and DR. So those are some of the upcoming ones. Let's dive right in. We got 30 minutes. We'll use it well for everybody. Also, feel free to ask questions anywhere throughout this. We'll be monitoring the questions part of the GoToWebinar, and we'll try to fit those in as they come up. We'll also try to leave a little bit of time at the end. So here's how we'll break down this topic. First, what the heck is conversation analytics? Let's talk about that, give you some fundamentals if it's a newer concept to you. It's a really powerful and amazing technology. We'll be speaking of it fairly agnostically from a platform perspective. There's many different conversation analytics technologies. We'll be not focusing on any one in particular, although we'll be showing one called Call Journey. The concepts and ideas really apply pretty broadly. Common use cases, we're going to really focus on COVID-19, and then we'll just talk about this is the goldmine. What can you do with this data now that you have it and understand some basics around it? So let's dive in really quick on Inflow. If you haven't met us before, we focus just on technology around unified communications and contact center. We work with some great partners, ShortTel, Mitel, RingCentral, Genesys, and many others, and then the broad ecosystem, right, of all those other workforce management, conversation analytics, gamification, all the technologies that sort of fill in the gaps in there around enabling that part of the tech stack. We support about 250,000 endpoints, 800 customers, and we try to pull all of that experience of working with customers and share that out broadly. That's the purpose of webinars like this. This one will be based on largely what we've been doing internally around conversation analytics as a support organization and contact center. So let's dive in. Just a couple customers we work with. We work with kind of a lot of mid-market, smaller enterprise companies spread across the US. So those are some of them. And I'm going to pass this over to Chris here to really give us a good one-page slide here on what is conversation analytics. Chris, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Mike. So a lot of customers ask us, what is conversation analytics, or what do I need to, or what can it give me, or what, why do I need to use it? So the best thing the best way, I guess, to describe conversation analytics is it takes the recordings of your employees and your customers, runs them through an analytics engine, transcribes them like you can see on the screen here, so you can see the exact transcription of it, so you can play them back later if you need to. But then it takes that data and runs it through different engines to figure out what are for compliance and risk purposes, or sales performance, customer experience, marketing, people and culture. There's all these different things that we can run it through. You can see on this little slide here, we can track the professionalism of your agents. Are they talking over the customers? What's their communication skills? From a compliance, are they giving the proper greeting in closing to their calls? Are they being polite and effective? Are they if a customer's sentiment is they're getting upset, how is the agent dealing with an upset customer, or the tone of their voices is a negative tone? All of those different things we can take into account with conversation analytics, and not just use them for the contact center. That's what a lot of people think is, oh, conversation analytics would only be useful in the contact center. It's very useful for sales purposes, marketing, anybody. You can really use it for any department inside the business, and kind of cater it to each department's needs. So maybe you want to auto score calls, or maybe you just want to know exactly what's the reason customers are calling into our company. Are they calling for tech support? Are they calling for sales? For accounting? There's different reasons that companies use conversation analytics, but it really isn't just a single use case. It could be used for all different departments inside your company. think I have one more slide too. Yeah. So with conversation analytics, this is what we like to, kind of talk about is who, what, when, and how, are words spoken. So every single call is tracked. You can see, the time of the call, the duration of the call. If there was silence on the call, overtalk is a great one that we use for, for training purposes. Is the agent talking over the customer, on a regular basis? But then from a clarity aspect, it makes it easy to figure out is, okay, could there be some, some issues of understanding each other, or are we mumbling or not talking, clearly? And then the emotion, like I talked about earlier, the emotion is really important to know, is the customer, is it a positive, is it negative, and then, or is it getting better, or is it getting worse, as the agent tries to maybe de-escalate or, or deal with an issue on a call. Emotion becomes really important, and not only just the client emotion, but also the agent emotion. If the customer gets upset, then how does the agent deal with that? Do they have a negative emotion as well, or are they staying positive even though the client is negative? And those are really important things that we can track. And then what we can do is we can score the agents and say, okay, overtalk is worth 10 points. Emotion is worth 5 points. How they deal with different scenarios are worth 10 points. And we can score each individual call so that when a supervisor logs in or a manager logs in, they can say, oh, looks like Chris is doing really good. Mike is doing really good, but but Billy's not. Billy has some weaknesses, and let's do some training around around those weaknesses. And I think that's the real big thing, is utilizing the data to improve your employees and your customers' experiences. All right, so we're going to hop in and we're going to cover 2 use cases. I'm going to cover the first one, and then Mike will jump in and kind of cover the second one. So my use case is how are your customers being affected by COVID-19? And COVID-19 has affected every business in one way or another, which means it's also affected your customers. So now more than ever, it's important for your business to do whatever you can to retain your customers. As businesses are slowing down, we want to make sure that we can retain the customers that we already have. So using conversation analytics, we can analyze exactly what your customers are saying and how they're saying it. So we can use sentiment and emotion to to kind of figure out, our customers happy, are they sad, are they angry when they when they're calling into us. We can also use the data from these conversations to adjust the needs of each of your customers. Like you see here, do they need to change their payment plan? Do they need to cancel? Obviously, those things we can track to figure out, okay, how can we not have a customer cancel? Can we adjust their payments? Can we stretch, can we lower their subscription costs, whatever we need to do there. But finally, the other thing we can do is we can use this understanding to adjust our goals, offerings, and plans of our business. So you see this graphic here. This is a new graphic that was put out for COVID-19. What it does is it allows us to track. So I pulled from the month of March because they had the biggest change, which I really liked in here. So you can see the beginning of the first week of March. Typical, if I look back in like February and stuff, that's it's pretty typical. But as the month goes, towards the middle of the month, you can see that our work from home category, at the beginning of the month, only 3% of calls said anything about working from home. By mid-month, we were up to about 33% of every single call was coming in was talking about work from home. So you see the different categories here. A lot of customers, ask us is, okay, well, how do you track the data in those categories? And this is what I really like about conversation analytics is all of these categories can be customized to, fit the needs and the goals of each individual company. So let's take social distancing, for an example that you see on here. The social distancing topic, it tracks phrases like self-isolation and social distancing, and then it tags each call that says one of those phrases, and it tags it, says, oh, yep, let's include this in the report because they said one of those phrases. For closures, the topic for closures on here, it tracks words like lockdown, school closure, business closure, different words like that. And it could be a single word that we're tracking, or it could be a phrase or multiple words that we're tracking. For COVID-19, it tracks virus, COVID, corona, illness, different words like that that are being tracked, for tagging. If they said anything like that, tags it as a COVID-19 call. So you can see each of the topics are very customizable. The one thing that I want you to take from this is that you can create additional categories here. So they have nice templates built into most of the conversation analytics platforms, but you can customize these exactly to fit your needs. We have medical customers that they might want to be able to see how many times somebody says they have a fever or a cough or different things like that. So we can customize those, and we can create a symptoms one of these categories and track different symptoms as they call in, maybe to talk to a nurse line or something like that. So that's a good use case for tracking that information. Next slide. So I want to dive in a little bit deeper on job loss. So job loss is one of the categories on the previous slide. And I want to kind of just dive in and kind of show you how it can be customized and what we're looking for when somebody says job loss and we're tracking, and we tag a call as a job loss call. So we could track individual words, like fired, that's a word on here that, or furlough, those are individual words. We could track phrases, I'm not working right now. The really nice thing you see on here is you see all these different phrases, and you see like a little, a number next to them. And what that's telling us is that if a customer inserts a couple of extra words in here, they say, maybe they say, I cannot pay at this time, or something. If they insert one or two words in the middle, as long as they've said these three words and, and inserted only like two extra words, it's still going to tag it. So it has enough analytics and intelligence in it to realize that if I add in the word, or I don't know, just a random words in the middle of these phrases, it can still tag them that way. So you have some flexibility on phrasing. Oops.
Sorry, Chris. I don't know what happened there, but let me go back to presenting here. Bear with me. There we go.
One more. There we go. So phrases are very customizable, and you can add, remove, customize these phrases. But then on the bottom, you can also see we're excluding. We can exclude phrases. If they say it's not working, well, that's not the same as I lost a job. They might be saying, hey, yeah, my phone isn't working right now. Well, I don't want to tag this job loss when they said my phone isn't working. So there's customization to each of these phrases and words that we're tracking. We can also track, the greeting or the closing, on it. So maybe, if we're not tracking about job loss, but we just want to see greetings or closings on it, so we can put, a particular greeting in here that says, thank you for calling Inflow Communications. Did we say that at the beginning? Maybe at the end of it, we want to say, thank you for calling, have a good day. I can track the closing in there. Other use cases for these phrases, in these customization is the reasons for calling. That's what you were seeing on the previous screen is, what were they calling about, all those different topics. We can build out those custom topics and add as many of these custom words and phrases that you want to make those reasons valuable for your business and for each department. As you can see, it's fully customizable, and that's what that's what I really like. As we're digging into data, more and more data, if you don't customize, what we've realized, if you don't customize the conversation analytics, you just kind of use out of the box, it'll give you some good usefulness, some use cases and stuff. But the customers that fully customize it are the ones that can really take advantage of the capabilities of the conversation analytics. Next slide. All right, so this slide I really like. This is a customer experience slide, and as we're tagging all the different reasons why people are calling in and everything like that. Well, sometimes we just want to know is what's our customer experience. All this working from home and social distancing, everything. Sometimes it can make for a negative customer experience because employees or customers are maybe there's a little bit more stress than usual. So customer experience tracks 4 different categories in here. It tracks customer effort, negative experience, positive experience, and cancellation risk. So each of these categories have different reasons that that they get tagged. So customer effort is a great one to track, because this tells you the amount of effort your customers are willing to put in, into calling in and talking with your team. So we can track anytime they say callbacks, or this is a repeat call, or can I get transferred, or can I get escalated, or can I talk to a manager? Those different things where a customer is putting in the effort that they want to get their issues resolved. The other thing we can look at is the negative experience. So when we look at the negative experience, it's anytime they say, I'm angry, I'm confused, if they use any profanities, if they say broken promises, or I have support issues, or apologies and stuff like that. Those are all negative experiences. Anytime we have our support person has to apologize over and over, that's going to create a negative experience in most cases for the customer. So we're tracking those. And what's really funny is that what you can't see from some of these is I have on my other screen, I was just clicking on some of these categories, and on one day last month, there was 22% of calls had a profanity in it. So very interesting with that's definitely a negative experience, from for those customers, that were calling in. The other thing, when you look at positive experience, which is really nice, is when they're saying thank you so much, my issue was resolved, or those different things that are positive experiences. That's what we're looking for. And you can see, in general, the positive experiences are larger than the negative experience. That's what you're typically looking for, is you're trying to create a baseline, and then figure out, okay, how can we shrink that negative experience and increase that positive experience for our customers, all while trying to minimize that cancellation risk at the very top there. When you hit the cancellation risk, this is where we could track words like, I don't use the product anymore, or I need to cancel, or it's too expensive. Different terms like that in phrases we can track to really figure out what is our cancellation risk and minimize that on an ongoing basis. And anytime we see a spike in that cancellation risk, we want to dive into those calls and figure out, okay, what can we do to minimize that cancellation risk? Because cancellation risk typically, as that increases, leads to customer drop in retention, and that's what we really want to minimize as much as possible. So with that, I think we're going to hop it over to Mike now, and he's going to kind of talk about, this is the customer side, he's going to talk about the employee side of conversation analytics.
Thanks, Chris. Perfect. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yes, you're good.
Excellent. Yeah, so there's a lot of questions we could ask around how are employees doing during COVID-19. We've got maybe an organization that we've got contact center folks or another business unit that's used to working in an office now working remote. So how are they impacted? These are some of the things we looked at for our team, and I'll give you a specific question we asked ourselves. Just a quick note before I dive into this too, on the customer side of it, we use some of this data to really inform some webinars, some training, some assets we could create quickly at the beginning of COVID-19 to help customers out with problems they're having based on information we're getting about the calls. So the ability to take those insights and do something with them, that's really the end goal you're arriving at here, right? So that's on the customer side. On the employee side, how are our employees' engagement levels from 2 months ago to now? What's that look like? What's the baseline, and then how has that changed, so we can see if they're still positive or we're seeing more negative emotion on calls. What kind of topics are coming up more or less than they did in the past. And we can really then say, hey, we get insights into how an employee is doing with something, a positive or negative emotion, or specific topics they're talking about, or there are other performance categories. Let's provide some coaching and support for them, which then in turn gives us a better customer experience. So you can really connect the dots pretty clearly. One of the questions we asked for ourselves that I'll highlight here was, are agents being disrupted in their work from home environment, right? That's our support, and our contact center folks are remote all the time, but we realized, look, everyone's, we've got school cancellations, other spouses or housemates, partners now working from home potentially or at home from job loss, how is this impacting the ability for our employees to perform? Are they suffering anywhere that we can help them and support them better? And so kind of diving in and elaborating a little on what Chris talked about, I wanted to look at a topic of create one of what's work from home like, and then see where there's negative experiences around work from home. And so really the kind of cool thing in conversation analytics, there's a bunch of different layers to. One is the metadata that you get from calls and conversations. So you can separate things like emotion, gender, overtalk, silence, some of those things Chris talked about, call types. Did this call come into a particular queue? Was it a callback? Was it inbound, outbound? All that metadata associated with a conversation is there, and you can filter and create. I want to look at this type. For mine, I was wondering, let's put a placeholder. Do I want to look at emotion as one of the categories on my metadata that I'm interested in? I do, but let me apply that later. But let me build out some phrases around working from home, right? What are some of the things? I don't think this is a comprehensive list. This was some of the ones I'd come up with. Like Chris said, again, what are things that are the realities of working from home? What are things I can think of, phrases, things being said? Let me build a topic around that. And then what I did for our team was I looked at our contact center in March. We had 88 total calls that were discussing this work from home target, right, where it saw those words and phrases. I filtered it further, and you can kind of see on the left in this example of kind of how it's laid out. I also said, show me ones where the metadata for that call is reflective of negative emotion. And that further filtered this down from 88 total calls to 26. And now I could see, okay, I've got 26 out of 88 total calls talking about work from home topics in March. That was about 30% of the calls. So is that a big deal? Is that a problem? Let me dig further. Now I've got kind of the conversations. Is this something that's an issue and there's some themes I can address, or is this just false positives, not really a correlation to the work from home being discussed about with really a negative emotion from the agent? So I dug into a bunch of examples of calls quickly. And again, this is really the power of, I think, conversation analytics. Is it does give you that macro level data like Chris was showing, but you can get down into the conversations and types of conversations that matter. It's really like a great lens to understand, focus your time and energy on QA in areas that really matter, where you can move the needle. And so I dug into these specific conversations, and I didn't have a slide for time. I didn't have one where I dove into one specifically, but you can kind of see some of the phrases where it's pulling out work from home topics in them. Just they can't work from home, etc. Really the takeaway I got was this really we're not seeing any impact to agents, our existing agents, around work from home, environment changes. So I can move on from this one. I feel pretty comfortable that this isn't something that most of our agents are struggling with. They're not vocalizing it when talking with customers. They're not sharing, frustrations, distractions, or if they are doing that, they're at least being professional with that, and they're not exposing that to a customer experience, right? So it really helped me understand, is this a concern or something I need to move on from? In this case, something I can move on from. So this, I think, in conclusion, as we wrap it up here, this is the Goldmine is there's all this data around how your employees are doing, how your customers are doing. That insight can inform very quickly training opportunities, potential customer issues. With a thing like COVID-19, for us, it gave us the ability internally at Inflow to be able to pivot our resources and time into areas that customers needed right then, because we're understanding at a very macro and then down to the micro level what's being asked for, how have things changed, how are people feeling, so what we can do to better serve them, better take care of them, better shift resources, create things, create how-tos, create videos, do trainings, things like that. So this is the Goldmine for organizations that I think is really not well understood, not well tapped into. I think another important point too is we work very heavily with IT departments for a lot of what we do, and certainly IT can be a component to this, but doesn't have to be. This doesn't have to be one more application or system that IT manages. I think the power of conversation analytics is really getting this into the hands of the operational folks who want to do QA, want to do these things. IT is a facilitator of that since it's technology, but largely it's not something where, hey, IT, can you run a report? This is democratizing of that data out to your folks. And I think, the thing we always say is, a lot of organizations don't know that this technology exists fairly accessibly, right? For whatever platform you're on, prem, cloud, that availability to start getting this insight is really powerful. I think at a time like COVID-19, when things are so rapidly changing, this is something that you can really pull into your process to understand real time almost what's happening with customers, what's happening with our employees, and what do we need to do to adjust and improve. So I love this topic. That's why I wanted to close with that piece. I'm going to turn it to question and answer, see if we had any specific questions here, Chris. A question here about kind of filtering. Let me go back a couple slides to answer this one. I think it's on this one. Yeah, I don't think I pointed this out very well. One of the powerful things, of course, of conversation analytics is being able to say, oh, I want to look for things my agent said or didn't say, or the things the customer said or didn't say, the other person on the other end of the line. So that ability to really sort of include, exclude, who was saying it. If you want to get filtered into other metadata, like maybe we serve a particular demographic and marketing wants to understand how does one gender or another perceive this product or service, right? And so you want to get some better understanding of, I want to compare how the emotions of callers from one gender to another type of thing for market research, right? Whatever the case may be, you have a lot of those. So I don't think I highlighted that well enough, but the ability to sort of carve out and filter out or include whatever you want is very powerful. Including phrases, excluding phrases, including from one person but not the other person, including times where there's overtalk or silence. The ability to sort of filter what makes sense for what you're trying to identify is incredibly powerful. Good question. Chris,
the only other question I think that I see that didn't get answered was, is there platform limitations on, or what systems can, I think they're asking, what systems can the conversation analytics be used on? So, and that's the nice thing with the conversation analytics platforms that we work with. We're able to have it work with cloud-based, contact centers, cloud-based phone systems, but also, we have a partnership that allows us to integrate with prem-based, systems. So if you have a Mitel on-premise system, we're able to record calls on the premise-based system, upload them to, a conversation analytics platform, so that you can then have access to all of this. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't have budget right now to upgrade to a cloud-based contact center to take advantage of this solution. We can add conversation analytics to your existing on-premise system as well.
Yeah, it's good. Great point. Great point. And great question. Cool. Well, I think we're right at the end. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, and so those questions, that's great. Thank you guys so much for the time today. Have any further questions about conversation analytics? You want to test it out, you want to see it in your environment. I think that's part of the power, is the ability to sort of really see and get insights into your data quickly. That's all doable. So if you have any questions, want to test that out, let us know. Here's our contact info. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.